Hello, it's good to see you. Today we are going to discuss sayings in the South and things that people say in the South. I had several people ask me to do a video about that, people who are not from the South who are just curious about some of the things they've heard me say and they didn't quite understand what it meant. And honestly, a lot of the sayings that I heard growing up, I don't really know what they mean either. And I have my cards. If you're new here, you may not be familiar with my little cards. I make these little papers and I put my notes on them. That way I don't forget anything. I make little cards and then I can talk about each card as I show it to you. So I had some thoughts about Southern expressions. And the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about Southern expressions was this right here. Not all Southerners use the same expressions. And it kind of bugs me whenever I see an article online and they have a list of the top 20 Southern expressions. And more often than not, if they have 20, usually at least 15 of them I've never even heard before. I've never heard anybody utter in my entire 50 years on this planet. So maybe they're common in other parts of the South and just not where I'm from. I don't know. But some of the things I'm going to go over today, they may not apply in other parts of the South. And it's not a comprehensive list of things that people say in the South by far. I mean, it's not even a comprehensive list of things that people in my part of the South say. I mean, these are just some that I came up with off the top of my head while I was thinking about it earlier today. And I want to just give you a little background on me. I have lived in central North Carolina for most of my life. I grew up in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, the foothills. So it's not really up in the mountains, but you can go on east and you head towards the coast, and it's very different out there. Accents change quite a bit from just in our state, from the mountains to the coast. You will hear a difference in the way people speak. There are different dialects. There's not one single Southern dialect. That'd be like saying there's one Northern dialect, that everybody in the north part of the USA sounds the same. They don't. I mean, everybody knows that, but a lot of people seem to think that all Southerners sound the same. We definitely don't. I mean, even in the part of the state that I live in, you will hear differences in the way certain words are pronounced, and sayings will be different. You will hear some sayings that, are new to you. And I have one on here that I'll tell you about that I never heard until I was grown. I never heard anybody utter this term before, but apparently it's a Southern term. I'd never heard it. Like, for example, where I grew up and where I live now, also, the word P-H-O-N-E, phone, in my family, we pronounce that phone. H-O-M-E would be home. It's like a O sound to it. But there are certain little pockets, even in the area where I grew up, where they pronounce it phone and home. They don't say phone, they say phone. And sometimes they put a little spin on it. It's more phone. It's interesting how they do. Hang on a minute, the world's burning down. A fire truck had to go by. Okay. So you will hear differences, and I love the way some people say home and phone and home. I guess if it was E.T., he would say phone home. But where I grew up, it was phone home. So I always like to mention the fact that the accents and the dialects change. Even just in a small geographical area, there can be differences in the way people speak. And not only in the way they speak, but in the phrases that they use and the way they use them. It can be a little bit different, like a shopping cart in a grocery store. A lot of people assume that all Southerners call them buggies, and that's not true. Not at all. Now, where I grew up, some people called them buggies. Some people call them carts. In my family, we called them carts. We didn't call them buggies. Nobody in my family calls them buggies. We call them carts. A soda, people think that all Southerners call them Cokes. That's not true either. Where I grew up, we called them drinks. So when I say I'm going to go get a drink, I mean I'm going to go get a soda. I wouldn't say I'm going to get a Coke, because where I come from, if you say you're going to get a Coke, that means you're going to get a Coca-Cola specifically. I would never refer to a soda in general as a Coke. I would just call it a drink, because where I grew up, people call them drinks. And where I grew up, this is one more thing and then I'll get into my list, because I just find this funny. Where I grew up, the word W-A-S-P, I do not know why, but a lot of people, especially the older generations, they pronounce it walst. I don't know why there's a T on the end of it. Walst. It's wasp, but they say walst. And I say walst because I grew up calling it a walst. And if it's plural, it's walstes. And a wasp nest is a waltz nest. Waltz nest. The T kind of disappears from the end of nest, and it goes on the end of the name of the insect. Waltz nest. Actually, it disappears completely. Waltz nest. So, anyway. So you can't expect the terms to be the same anywhere you go. So if you do travel to the South and you've never been, you may not hear any of these. You may hear some that are totally different. But we'll go over a few that I have here on my papers. The first one I think is probably the one that you, if there is one that if you had to pick one that would be universal, it would be this. A big old card for that little word, y'all. Y-A-L-L. Y'all. Now, the year I spent living in Illinois, I wish I had a nickel for every time people asked me to say this word. It was like I was an exotic bird. I would talk and people would just stare at me, and they wanted me to say y'all. They wanted to hear me say y'all, and they wanted me to teach them how to say it. Well, you just have to practice at it. Y'all. It's like Y-A-W, y'all. And that's part of my dialect, the part of South I'm from. If you have it, sometimes in certain words, when you have an L or two L's, it becomes a W. Like the word building is building, and the G just disappears. If we don't say building, we say building. And that's I think that's kind of a common thing, at least where I come from, is that L's get turned, like if I try to say the letter L, it becomes a W, L. Building, y'all. So we say y'all. Now, this word gets misused a lot by people who don't understand it. I know it's little and it looks simple, but people mess it up all the time. You will never, ever hear anyone use this word when talking to a single person about a single person. It is always understood that you mean at least two people. So I could say to you, like say I'm talking about you and your sibling. Did y'all have a good Christmas? But I would never say that if I was just talking to you. I would say, did you have a good Christmas? You would never refer to a single person as y'all. It is always at least two people. Now, if you mean a group of people, you could say all of y'all. All of y'all. So that just includes everybody. So if you're trying to differentiate, like say you have a group of people and you say, y'all come eat. And they say, everybody? Yeah, all of y'all, come on. So that means you're talking about everybody, not just part of a group or anything like that. So you would never use the word to refer to one person, but you could use y'all speaking to one person as long as it's understood that you mean when you're actually referring to at least two people. But a lot of times, not so much anymore, because I think they've got, they try to do better, but a lot of movies that are set in the South, they screw that up at least once in the movie. You will hear them refer to one person as y'all. And every Southerner sitting here going, yeah, you just lost me. So y'all. Y'all is very common. Here's another one. Now this one I think gets a bad rap, honestly. Bless your heart. Now, when I was growing up, this 99% of the time was not meant to be ugly. It was not meant to be like a polite insult. Most of the time, if you were saying bless your heart, you meant it in a good way. You didn't mean it like, oh, you're stupid or, screw off or anything like that. Usually you mean it as a good thing or as a term of sympathy. Like if something really bad happened, I might say, oh, bless your heart. You've been through a lot. I know in a lot of memes online, people make it sound like if a Southerner says bless your heart, that's their way of saying F you. Honestly, that's not true. It's not, no. I never used it as a polite FU until I started replying to certain comments in the comment section. I don't know that I've ever looked somebody in the eye and said, bless your heart, and meant it in a mean way. So usually if you hear this, it's not going to be somebody being mean to you or anything like that. They either, they feel bad for you. Maybe they feel bad for you because they think you said something stupid or, you did something stupid, or maybe they feel bad for you for that. But I don't think most people that use the term bless your heart mean it in a bad way. It's usually meant to express sympathy, or like, say somebody did something really nice for you, you'd say, well, bless your heart, you are so sweet. You say something like that. So I know it seems like if you're on the internet and you read stuff, you would think that every Southerner who says bless your heart, they're insulting you. That's not true at all. Now here's one thing that I thought of when I was thinking about expressions that I've heard in my lifetime. And a lot of these I heard from older generations when I was growing up. You can still hear them in younger people, like people my age and younger. Not that I'm young, but I'm talking about people who are now in their 70s and 80s. I heard them more from that generation of people. But I think when I think about a lot of these expressions that I've heard, in my opinion, it seems like a lot of these expressions came about to avoid cursing or taking the Lord's name in vain. You do have to remember, most of the South it's more religious overall than other parts of the country. You do have the Bible Belt here. You do have, especially again in the older generations, people tend to be more religious. And taking the Lord's name in vain is frowned upon. So, but people still like the feeling of a good declaration of sorts. And a lot of these are ones that I remember hearing my parents use when I was growing up. And I think it was a way to kind of express the emotion of whatever it was you were trying to convey without taking the Lord's name in vain, without, using profanity or, cursing. Like, this is one my mom used to say all the time, and I have to pronounce it for you. Now, babe, if you were to spread this out, it would be I will declare. But the way she said it was I declare. And usually it was an expression of exasperation. Like if I came in the house with a snake, which happened frequently, I would catch frogs and snakes and lizards and bring them in the house. Sometimes they get away from me. I declare. And my mom have her hands on her hips. I declare, Mary. And she'd make me find it and take it outside. I declare, quit bringing things in the house. Quit bringing animals in here. I declare. But it's a way to express an emotion, again, without swearing, instead of saying I swear, because that, for a lot of people, maybe not so much anymore, but the older generations, even to say I swear is not appropriate. Like, that's still considered inappropriate. That's basically you're swearing. I swear. So they don't want to say I swear. So they say I don't know why they say I will. I declare. I declare. So they just say that to express the feeling. And here's one that I kind of picked up. And if you If you watch my vlog channel and you've watched any of the videos that I made while driving, you've probably heard me say this one. I'll Swanee. Because I get exasperated with the traffic around here sometimes. And I say things. Now, I will admit, I'm no hypocrite. I'll just tell you now. I do swear. I do. If you've watched my driving videos, you've heard me swear quite a bit. So I'm just saying that for a lot of the older generation, and some people my age too, you're going to hear this kind of stuff from people who don't swear, or they try to not swear. I've kind of given up on it. I do swear. Probably my ancestors hate me. I know they do. But I'll Swanee. I'll Swanee. So it's another way to avoid saying I swear. You just say I'll Swanee. And my mom used to say that all the time. I'll Swanee. It was just another way to say, what in the world? You know, it's like I swear, but you're not saying swear. So it's okay. I didn't make the rules. I'm just trying to explain this is kind of how I see it. Now, I have one. I put this at the back of my list of papers, but let me bring it up right now. I want to just say this right because I have something here that kind of goes along with it. I have this paper and I wanted to tell you about it. If you're visiting the South or you're going to be around somebody who is from the South, again, especially older people, the older generations, I don't care what part of the South they're from. If needed, now everybody's different. Maybe it won't be an issue for you, but you will need to develop a good cuss filter. And if you grew up in the South, you probably have a cuss filter, whether you realize it or not. You just automatically, when I am around older people, I watch my language. I would not swear in front of them because I know that is very offensive to a lot of older people. And it wouldn't matter if they were from the South or not. It's just I was raised to have respect for my elders, no matter who they are. You have respect for your elders, the people older than you. If you were in their presence, you offer them your seat. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I mean, that's just the way I was raised. That's the way a lot of people were raised. So I would not swear in front of an older person because I don't want to risk offending them. But I wanted to say this one thing. The number one rule, if you are around anybody, especially older generations from the South, and I put this one in all caps, which I never do, never, ever, ever say, God damn. Do not say that. I didn't even spell it out on the card. That is like the most, don't say it. Do not utter those two words together around an older Southern person. It is really offensive. Now, not every Southerner is going to be bothered by it, but if it's an older Southerner, there's a really good chance that is really going to offend them. And it will probably show on their face. You know, Southerners are pretty good about trying to be polite and, you know, but if you said that around an older Southern person, you would probably know right away that it was not cool. That's like the ultimate swear that you don't use. You just don't, okay? Just don't. You're not going to gain anything by saying it. You're not going to get anything for it. Just don't say it. That's all I'm saying. But I got to thinking about it. We found a way around it. We did. We have lots of little words that we use in the place of it, if you think about it. These are just a few that I thought of right off the top of my head. We got dadgummit, dadgum, dadburn, galldarn, dadblasted. Oh, I forgot dagnabbit. I didn't write dagnabbit down. That's one I've started saying. Dagnabbit. Because I'm trying to not swear. So I've been saying dagnabbit, and it's actually kind of satisfying to say dagnabbit. So that's another one. But if you think about it, if you just trade around the D and the G, I mean, it's, you know, it sounds like what it's trying to, you know, what you're trying to not say. So those are some. And again, you're not going to hear this everywhere, but where I grew up, I heard all the older generation use these words. And dagnabbit, which I can't believe I forgot to put dagnabbit on there. Dad blasted, gall darn, dad burn, dad gummit. So, I mean, you can tell what they're trying to not say. So those are common. This was another one that my mom used to utter this all the time. I think raising me was a very frustrating experience for her because I have an older brother, but he was more of an indoor kid and very low maintenance, very low demand kid. And then she had me, and I was kind of like the Tasmanian devil, and I was always, bringing in wildlife from outside and breaking bones and falling off of things and giving her a heart attack every other day. And I caused her to express exasperation many times over the years. So this was one she would say, and again, this was sort of an expression of exasperation. Law. And you would say it just like that. Law. And it was just another way. It's kind of like saying, Lord, have mercy. But you don't want to say that because that's taking the Lord's name in vain. So they just say, law. And usually it might be followed by, if it was really exasperating, it might be followed by, Claire. Law, Claire. And so there was a lot of that when I was growing up because I think I aged my mother. Now, you don't want to say damn either because that is also considered, that's profanity. You don't want to be using that word. But they want to use words that sound like it. I'm not saying any of this makes sense. I'm saying this is just how it is. So they'll say dang or darn or dern, turn, dang. And you might drag it out like that, like dang. So it's a way to kind of express maybe admiration, or again, it could be exasperation. Dang. It's kind of like saying damn, but you're not saying the D word, And so it's just a way to say it without saying it. I guess these aren't so much. I do have some sayings here. I'm talking about individual words at this point. Now this is one that I heard my mom say and some of her generation. Lousy, lousy, lousy. She used to say that. And again, it's a way to not say something like lordy, 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 because you don't want to say that because it's taking the Lord's name in vain. So they say, lousy, lousy, lousy. And I guess you could use that to express exasperation, or I don't even know what that is. It has sort of a lazy feel to it. So I'm not exactly sure what that would express. But lousy, lousy, lousy. Now, I haven't heard anybody use this phrase or use these words in many years. I haven't heard this since I was a kid. But I have this little flashbulb memory of my mom when I was a kid. I was in the backyard playing, and she had the window open, and she was washing dishes, and I just have this memory of her saying it. She looked down at me, and I don't know what I was doing, but I must have been doing something she didn't like, because she went, lousy, lousy, lousy. And then she shut the window. I don't know. Do you have that, like little flashbulb memories from when you were a kid? Just a few seconds, like a little snippet. I just remember that. Another word that you can use is plum. Not like an unshriveled prune, but like a Plumb. Like, I'm wore plumb out. So you use it as sort of it kind of emphasizes, it kind of underlines the fact that you're worn out. It means I'm not just worn out, I'm completely worn out. Or it's kind of like worn slap out. Sometimes you hear that too, slap. I'm worn slap out. I'm worn plumb out. So it just emphasizes whatever it is you're trying to express. It kind of underlines what you're saying. I'm plumb tired. Now, part of my dialect, a lot of the older generations, instead of saying tired. They say tarred. I'm tarred. I'm plumb tarred. Like Tarred, but it's tired. But they say tarred. I'm plumb tarred. Yeah. Some parts of the South, for the word wash, they say wash. But where I grew up, they say wash. They don't say wash. But up where I lived in Illinois, some people said wash. And bathrooms, restrooms, they called them washrooms. And a water fountain, they called it a bubbler. I thought that was cool. Another way to emphasize a point that you want to make is to say way yonder. Way yonder. Like you could look around and go, I got way yonder too many books in my room. I got way yonder too many pairs of shoes. So it's like saying, not only do I have too many, I have way too many. I have so many. Way yonder too many. So again, it's another way to kind of emphasize the point that you're trying to make. It is kind of limited though, kind of like plum. Now you can't use way yonder and plum in every instance. It's not going to work for everything. And I don't even know how to describe when it does work. Plum, most of the time when you hear plum, at least where I grew up, it usually goes along with wore plum out. Like, look at them shoes. They wore plum out. You can see through the bottom of them. They wore plum out. You wore them plum out. So you would use it for something like that. You can't use it in every instance where you're trying to emphasize something or it would just sound weird. Way yonder. Way yonder is just when you have a remarkable excess of something. I mean, it goes beyond just a little bit too much. You got way yonder too much. It's really bad. It's at a point where you need to intervene. You got way yonder too many pairs of shoes. You got way yonder too much jewelry. That's what I should probably say to myself. I have way yonder too much jewelry. But I don't care because it's not bothering anybody, so I'm not going to do anything about it. Now, this is not necessarily just a Southern thing, because I've heard people from other parts of the country say it too. I reckon. So that's kind of like, whatever. That's the way, typically, if I'm using it, that's kind of how I mean it. Well, I reckon. I guess. It's usually meant to be kind of maybe a slightly snarky, passive-aggressive response. I reckon. So I would usually, if I were to use I reckon, it would be when maybe I'm being a little bit flippant, or passive-aggressive. Yeah, I reckon. And you would just say, and that would be the entire sentence. Usually I wouldn't add anything to it. I would just say, I reckon. Oh, we should go here to eat. And I'm thinking, I wish I'd mentioned that other place. Well, I reckon that'll do. Yeah, it's usually meant to be a passive-aggressive thing. This is a very Southern one right here. Don't be ugly. Now, that is not a commentary on how you look. It has nothing to do with your appearance. It has to do with how you're acting or how you're treating somebody. Don't be ugly. Yeah, don't act like, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jackass. Basically, is what's saying. Don't be ugly. You being ugly. Quit being ugly. And that's where maybe you're being disrespectful to somebody, or you're just being an ass in general. If somebody tells you don't be ugly, basically it means you need to straighten up and fly right. You need to, I don't know if that's Southern or not, straighten up and fly right. My dad says that sometimes. You straighten up and fly right. He used to tell me that when I was a kid, straighten up and fly right. Usually when I was about to get punished for something, he would say that. Don't be ugly. So don't be a jerk, basically. Quit being ugly. Or you might hear, like, there'll be some gossip going on, and you'll say something and go, oh, I'm being ugly. I need to stop right there. You can call yourself out. You can say, I'm being ugly. And that means, I've gone a little bit too far with the gossip. I need to stop. I'm being ugly. And usually that's the other person's cue to go, no, you're not. Go on, tell me more. Well, all right. but you didn't hear it from me. And here's another one. This, again, I don't know that this is necessarily just a Southern thing. I'm pretty sure it's not. It'll all come out in the wash. And that means, in the end, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Don't stress over whatever it is too much. It'll work out. It's kind of like, you have a whole basket full of dirty clothes. Well, it'll all come out in the wash. All that dirt and yuck, all that yuck will just go away. It'll come out in the wash. Don't worry about individual little stains and stuff. It'll all come out in the wash. And it's just a way of saying, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't focus on it too much. Don't worry about it too much. It'll all come out in the wash. Here's one. Getting too big for your britches. That doesn't mean you just had too much for dinner at Thanksgiving. No, that means you're getting too full of yourself. Sometimes it can be used in ways that I think are detrimental. Like if you come from a family where they don't encourage higher education, you may have family members telling you, if you want to say you want to go to college, they may say, "Oh, getting a little too big for your britches there, aren't you? You're forgetting yourself." They may try to encourage you to not do it. But it can mean you're getting a little too full of yourself. You're getting a little too full of yourself. I don't know, getting too big for your britches. It's not a literal thing. It's not talking about how your clothes fit. But if somebody says you're getting too big for your britches, it means they think you are getting too full of yourself. And you can take that any way you want to. You don't have to listen to them. Let's see. Oh, now here's a term. This is one that I was told that all Southerners use. What kind of quotes are those? Grizzly bear quotes. This is a term I was told all Southerners use. I never heard this till I was an adult. Cattywampus. Nobody where I grew up says cattywampus. I had never heard that. I thought it was like a skin condition. No, it means crooked, cockeyed, not quite straight or... Now, I had heard catty corner and kitty corner. I had heard people mostly catty corner. And that might mean something's just a little off kilter a little bit. Like you might have a table with a wonky leg or something. Well, apparently cattywampus, I guess, means basically the same thing as catty corner or kitty corner. But where I come from in the Piedmont, well, at least the part of the Piedmont I grew up in, nobody says cattywampus. I'd never heard that. So, I guess in other parts of the South they do. Not where I grew up. Nobody says cattywampus. I had never heard that. Kitty corner, I had heard. But mostly they'll just say it's cockeyed or wonky. W-O-N-K-Y, wonky. Or cockeyed. Askew. Or whatever you want to say. But yeah, that's a good example of something that people... Oh, all Southerners use that term. No, they don't. I don't think there are many terms that you could say all Southerners use. Maybe y'all. Y'all, I reckon, would be one. But no, they don't all use it. This one I heard a lot growing up. I ain't seen you in a month of Sundays. In a month of Sundays means you're not going to find a whole month full of Sundays. So that would have been a long time ago that you had a month of Sundays. So that means a long, long time. I ain't been here in a month of Sundays. Whew, it's been a while. So that means a very, very long time. Because I don't believe you're going to find a whole month of Sundays, but that's what that means. One that's kind of similar to that would be like, and again, I don't know that this is Southern. Say Tuesday week, Wednesday week. That means a week from this Tuesday or a week from this Wednesday. So if somebody says to you, "Oh, that's Monday week," that means it's a week from this, whatever Monday's coming up. It's a week from that Monday. So it's just, that's what that means. And again, I don't know how universal that is. Maybe it is, but I don't know, but I have had to explain that before. Who was it? It was my first husband. Now, my first husband was from Massachusetts, and he lived here with me for a brief period. We weren't married very long. It's a whole thing. And somebody said that to him, saying, "Oh, it's Tuesday week." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And then when they walked away, he goes, "What does that mean?" I had to be like his interpreter. He really needed an interpreter when he first came down here because he had no idea what anybody was saying. It's not funny because if I went up to Massachusetts, he'd probably have to do the same thing for me. So I would have to explain what things meant. And I never really thought about it until I had to explain what these things meant. But he had never heard that before. He said, "What does that mean? Tuesday week, what does that mean?" And it was, "That means it's a week from this coming Tuesday." "Oh, why didn't you just say that?" "Because it's easier to say Tuesday week." So that's what it means. If I had to pick another somewhat universal Southern term, it would have to be fixin' to. I'm fixin' to. That means I'm about to. Or if you're making lunch, you say, "I'm fixin' lunch." You're preparing it, you're fixing it. I'm fixin' to fix lunch. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that, but I'm fixin' to do it. That means I'm about to do it. When you gonna get out there and clean your car out? "I'm fixin' to do it. I'm just about to go do it," but you know good and well you're not. You just say that. So if you hear fixin' to, that means about to. Unless you're fixing lunch. If I say I'm fixing lunch, it doesn't mean lunch is broken and I'm repairing it. It means I'm preparing lunch. I'm fixing my breakfast. My breakfast isn't broken. I'm preparing my breakfast. So fixing can have different meanings. Fixins can also be your side dishes for a meal, usually a lunch or a dinner. Oh Lord, that brings up another thing I didn't put on a card. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I went to a little church school up through 5th grade, and they taught us that the proper way to say it is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But the common vernacular of the area was breakfast, dinner, and supper. So they referred to lunch as dinner, and they referred to dinner as supper. And so I still have to remember when I'm talking to my dad and he tells me what he had for dinner, he means what he had for lunch. And if he's talking about supper, he's talking about dinner. So in my mind, I have to just have my little secret decoder ring up there to remember and realize what meal he's talking about. So fixins can be your side dishes. Got your macaroni and cheese and mashed potatoes or green beans, whatever. You can call those fixins. So fixin' can have all different kinds of meanings in the South. And sometimes you can figure it out from the context of the conversation, what they're talking about. But yeah, if you hear somebody say they're fixing to do something, that means they are implying that they're about to do it. Now, whether they actually do it or not is another story. And then we have this saying, Lord willing and God willing and the creek don't rise. That means we're going to do whatever. We're going to carry on with our plans unless something beyond our control takes place. Which would mean, I guess, in the past, if the creek's up too much and we can't cross the creek, we're not going to be able to go and do whatever it is. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. So as long as we have things, within our control, we're going to do whatever it is we're talking about doing. We're going to go to that thing. We're going to do that thing. Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be there. So you would hear that. So as long as we can control what's going on and nothing happens beyond our control, we'll do it. Now here's one you're going to hear on the phone and in person when you're having a conversation with somebody, especially if the conversation has gone on for a little bit. Well, let me let you go. And that's kind of your way of saying, I'm going to end this conversation shortly. Well, let me let you go. And you would say that to signal to the other person, this conversation is coming to an end. So let me let you go. But it all kind of runs together. Let me let you go. So it just sounds like, let me let you go. And every Southerner, that signals in their brain, well, that's the end of that conversation, basically. And usually then the other person will go, well, all right then. It's been good talking to you. And so we don't all sound like Gomer Pyle, but the more I talk about Southern sayings, the more it comes out of me. So let me let you go. That means I'm going to wrap up this conversation, and you can say it in person or on the phone. I don't think I've ever typed it in an email or a text. That's something that would be verbal. Full as a tick. Now this one is kind of I don't want to think about it too much. Have you ever seen have you ever seen a tick that's been attached, like to a dog or something? They get all full. You'd say that if you just had a big meal. Oh, I'm full as a tick. Oh, I'll go lay down. That just means you've had a big meal and you just feel very full. It's kind of gross though if you think about it. Now this saying is one that I really don't hear anymore. But again, the older generations. Now, when I was growing up, I spent most of my childhood around older people. Really, the only time I was around people my age was when I was at school. We didn't have any neighbors. I had really nobody to play with. So I was with my parents, my grandparents, you know. So a lot of this stuff is stuff I heard them say growing up. What in a Sam Hill? And every now and then I catch myself saying this. When I get really mad, these old-timey phrases come out of my mouth and I turn into my mother. What in a Sam Hill? And usually, from when I hear it, people say that when they're not happy about something. It's like, it's a way of saying, what the hell, without saying hell, you know. What in a Sam Hill? Now, I have no idea who Sam Hill is. Maybe it's a hill somewhere. I meant to look it up before I sat down here, but I forgot. What in a Sam Hill? So it's a way of expressing a notion, a feeling, an emotion without saying hell. That's my opinion. I mean, that's what I think it is. So it kind of conveys the same feeling, but without saying a dirty word. What in a Sam Hill is going on in here? My mom used to say that all the time, usually when she was mad at me. What in a Sam Hill are you doing? She would say that. So, I don't know where that came from. I don't know who Sam Hill may not even be a person. It may be a place. Sam Hill. It may be a hill somewhere. I don't know. All I know is I heard it whenever I did something I wasn't supposed to be doing. What in a Sam Hill did you bring all these leaves in the house for? One time I was out in the woods. I was always playing out in the woods. And I found a cocoon. This has nothing to do with anything. I'm just going to tell you. I found a cocoon out in the woods and it was attached to a branch. Now this was in the fall. I didn't know what kind of cocoon it was. I thought it was empty because it felt very light. I brought it in the house. And I was always bringing in stuff from outside and I'd take it in my room, you know. So I took this cocoon in my room and I had a glass in there and I had broken the branch off that the cocoon was on and I just set it down in that glass and I forgot about it. One morning I woke up. Was it when I woke up? It might be when I came home from school. I don't remember. The cocoon was not empty. No. The cocoon was full of hundreds of little praying mantises. Tiny little praying mantises. They were all over the place in my room because it was warm in the house. You know, they were supposed to stay in there all winter, but they were inside. So I guess it got warm enough that they hatched in my room. And my mom was mad because they were everywhere. And some of them had escaped my room and had kind of gone out into the house. So there were little praying mantises. It looked like there were thousands of them, but there probably weren't that many. There were so many little praying mantises all over the house. And I felt terrible because I knew they weren't going to survive. We couldn't keep them in the house. So unfortunately, they all had to perish because it was like January when they hatched in the house and we had no way to keep them alive. We had nothing to give them, nowhere to put them. But yeah, she probably at that point when I had to tell her about the praying mantis, she probably said, what in a Sam Hill would you bring a praying mantis cocoon in the house for? I didn't know. I wouldn't have brought it in. I thought it was empty. Well, I tell you what, when that happened, she was probably mad as a hornet. That's another one. I guess people still say, well, she was mad as a hornet when she found out I had a bunch of praying mantises in the house. Like I did it on purpose. Mad as a hornet. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Have you ever been around a hornet that's not happy? You know, like you swat a hornet's nest or something happens. Like, ooh, they get mad. Now, this is another one that is, I don't hear it so much anymore, but I used to hear this more when I was little. If I had my druthers, And it's like saying, I'd rather. If I had my druthers, that's like saying, if I had my way, if I got to make the decision, if I had my choice, like I say, if I had my druthers, I'd have $1 million in the bank. If I had my druthers, I'd take $1 million. So if I had the ability to choose, like I have A or B. Well, if I have my brother, if I had my druthers, I'd pick A or B or whatever. So it's just if you got to pick. So it's druthers. But you don't really hear that so much anymore. And this is what my dad used to say, and I literally got to witness this once. And he would use this a lot talking about me. Because he'd say, you're grinning like a mule eating briars. And briars, blackberry briars. Blackberries grow everywhere where I grew up. Blackberries, blueberries, huckleberries, currants, berries everywhere. I grew up surrounded by timberland. And blackberries, we would go out and pick blackberries when they were ready in the summertime. And we picked some that had, some of the briars that had the blackberries all over them. My dad had a friend that had a mule, because I always wondered what this meant. He said, have you ever seen a mule eating briars? I said, no. So we took some blackberries to the mule, and a mule will eat about anything. And when they want the blackberries, which we gave them some, but if it's on the briar, they eat it with they don't want to get poked, so they eat it kind of like this, so it looks like they're smiling really big. So he used to say that I had this big smile. He said, you look like a mule eating briars. Now, I've only really ever heard my dad say that, but he's about as southern as you get. So, but they do look like they're smiling when they do it. We didn't make them eat a whole lot. We took the blackberries off so that we could just have them eat it out of our hands so they didn't get hurt. Now, this is one you probably heard before. Now, this is Mama and them. Now, them usually refers to at least some of the part of your family. Excuse me. Got a little bit of a tickle in my throat. I've been talking too long. Sorry. Now, this is pronounced Mama and them. How's your mama and them? So it sounds like Mama and them. Mama and them. So when you say, how's your mama and them, you're asking, how's your mama doing? And them could be like your daddy, your siblings, your mama's boyfriend, whoever it is. But it's understood that you're talking about the person's mama and at least one or two other people. I mean, I would imagine it would be like, just the rest of your family. How's your mama and them? And it's just a way of asking, how's your family doing? Or you can say, how's your daddy and them? And them kind of refers to everybody other than the one person you just named. So I say this, I've said this to people, especially if I'm talking to people from back home. How's your mama and them? I have not seen your mama in 10 years. How's your mama doing? How's your mama and them? So I think, what was his name? Billy Bob Thornton made a movie with that name. I don't think I've seen it, Mama and them. Now, he's from Arkansas. But it's very interesting. When I was a kid, maybe about 10 or 11 years old, my dad was in Vietnam, and he knew a guy who lived in Arkansas. And we went to visit him one summer for like a week. We went up to Arkansas. I can't remember where it was in Arkansas. But it was interesting because up there, the terrain and everything looked exactly like the area where I grew up. It was like you just took the area where I grew up and put it in a whole other state. And the dialect was almost identical. It was weird. They pronounced things and had the exact same sayings. It was very odd how similar it was. But we were up there for about a week, and I've always been really interested in accents and dialects and things like that. And it was very interesting to go up there and hear them talk. And it was almost exactly like where I grew up. It was wild. But people between here and there don't sound like where I grew up. So anyway, Mom and them refers to everybody. So if you ask any Southerner, how's your mama and them? Well, not any Southerner. Most Southerners are going to know what you mean by that. Like if you ask me, how's your mama and them? I would assume, well, first of all, if you knew my parents were divorced, I would assume you meant my mama and like my brother and, my aunts and uncles and, stuff like that, my cousins. And usually you have a pretty good idea of the person who's asking you that. You have a pretty good idea of what they mean, like who in your family they know, who they're asking about. If they know any of your family personally, you might say, oh, Uncle so-and-so has been doing this and my brother's doing this. But you would really only elaborate if you knew it was somebody they knew. So you wouldn't go into detail about every single family member. You just kind of base it on who they know. So, yeah. But at one point I do want to make about any of this stuff. Southerners we do not walk around spouting this stuff off all the time. We don't walk around going, well, I declare. We don't walk around doing that. If you were to read some of the stuff online, you would think that our dialogues sound like this right here. Grinning like a possum eating a sweet tater. Who licked all the red off your candy? She could start an argument in an empty house. The porch light's on, but nobody's home. We don't walk around talking like this all the time. I can go for days without using a Southern expression, and sometimes I do. Yet we don't walk around talking like this all the time. Most of the time, we don't really talk any differently than you as far as what we convey to one another. We may say it with a different accent, but we don't really communicate any differently than you do. We are not a walking, cliche. We're not a walking expression vending machine. We don't do that any more than anybody else. I don't think we do. I think anywhere you go, you're going to hear expressions like that. I don't think it's a unique thing to the South. I think everybody does it. But that's just a few, and it's not all, but it's just a few of the little words and terms, things that we use here. And again, I think a lot of them come from the underlying desire to not swear, to not use profanity. I think that's where a lot of them come from. But again, if you meet an older Southerner, do not say GD. Just, if I can express nothing else to you, just don't do that. That's just one of the things that you just pick up on growing up in the South. That is just a big no-no. You don't do that. I would not do that. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little papers, my little terms and words. It's not all of them, but I wanted to share a few of them with you that I thought of today. And thank you so much for being here. I really hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.